Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Pretty cool episode today. Normally this focuses on, cool, innovative companies in the defense industrial base, creating platforms, technology, ways to help our warfighters. But today we're going to speak with a company that's taking care of our airmen, soldiers, Marine, Coast Guard guardians, the whole list, which is in many respects more important. So I'd like to introduce Jill Castilla, CEO and president of Citizens Bank of Edmond, Oklahoma, and also founder and CEO at Roger. And you'll understand why that's important here a little bit. So Jill, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, no, so excited, David. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, very cool. So Jill, you obviously are very involved with the military in many aspects. And I think your personal story of, interaction with the military and then your journey to become CEO, there aren't many female CEOs of banks, around the country. So I'll outright start there. Just talk to me about your journey and kind of where your passion from working with military members came from.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I grew up in Eastern Oklahoma, a single dad who also served. I was raising a couple of, girls in this little small town and was hoping to get us out of high school, safe and sound. And then after that, he really wasn't, really didn't focus on where we go from there. We kind of thought, he encouraged us to like settle down in our little town. I really wanted to go to college. I carried groceries out during high school with a local community banker who paid for me to take the ACT, and she encouraged me to apply to go to college. And her grandkids were in my class, and they lived on the other side of the tracks than I did, and so I was really encouraged by her to apply to college. So I applied to school, ended up going to Oklahoma State. My dad didn't provide information. I applied for financial aid, even though I would have qualified. So I still worked at the little grocery store at Oklahoma State all night and then go to school during the day. And it was a really good student and had a lot of success there, but I started running out of money. I was trying to pay my own tuition, my own room and board. And so I made it through 3 semesters till I had to move home to kind of save money again. And my dad, but you're a grown up then, and he's like, you don't get to stay in the house. So he had a little storage building behind the house and said I could stay there until I saved money. So a little storage unit with no electricity, no other facilities is where I stay, no lock on the door. And I was working at the local grocery store and carrying groceries out and just really trying to save money again and having a difficult time doing that. But I carried groceries out for an Army recruiter who said if I enlisted, then I could become an independent student so I could apply for financial aid on my own after I finished basic and AIT and my service requirements, and I qualified for the GI Bill, and it literally was like heavens opened up and angels started singing because I knew I was physically fit, I knew I was tough enough, and it just like, wow, this is a pathway for me to get educated, to be able to kind of escape my small town, and then be able to, forge a pathway for the future. I really was kind of out of hope, and it provided, like it does for many of us, like this pathway to be able to, better your position in life. And so enlisted, was an 82 Bravo at the time, which is a construction surveyor, and that migrated as MOSs combined and such, but had went off to basic and AIT, had all my money direct deposit. My mom at the time was dating someone that worked at the bank that I'm at now. And so I opened up my bank account at Citizens Bank of Edmond and just lived on that little sustenance allowance while I was at basic and AIT. The Army carved me up, and so I gained some weight when I came back home, and a family member took me shopping and I wrote a check for like $300 thinking I was getting, a new class of like, civilian clothes and my new physique. I got noticed that I was overdrawn in my checking account. I thought I had saved up, about $15,000 in my account, and it was all gone. And a family member I found the checks later where they had written checks on my account. When I came to the bank, I didn't really know the terminology to use to say, like, this is forgery and banks are required to give you your money back if you have forgery. But they said no, and basically, like, figure it out on your own. And so, I really was in a really difficult spot because I couldn't. A car had been sold to me that they didn't even own that they sold to me. And like, it was just this horrible situation I was in that I really didn't know my way out of. And so I end up like kind of hustling and finding, different places to live and surfing couches and kind of, carrying a trash bag full of my belongings around.
Is this after you got out of the military then?
Yeah, so I was on active duty for about 2 years at Fort Leonard Wood, And then I went into the National Guard after that. And so then ended up going down to Texas where they would give me a full ride to go to a college down there and just got rides all the way down to Kingsville, Texas. And then my happened to meet my husband like when I first got there. And so, we can go into the big story after that, but that kind of, he ended up getting his commission and I ended up finishing my National Guard's enlistment. We got stationed in Hawaii after we got married, and then I was a military spouse for 25 years. And I have two children now that are serving on active duty. One that went to West Point and is finishing up, and so now in his seventh year on active duty, just came back from a 15-month deployment, and daughter that went to the Naval Academy, who's on a ship out in the Pacific right now. So, and then we have a third kid. He's supposed to be a doctor in the military at some point. So he's just started college a couple, it's in his sophomore year. But yeah, so that was kind of the journey from a military standpoint. It was really kind of out of desperation for me and then choice for my husband and my kids. And then I've been able to kind of come back on the book end of it and serve in a volunteer capacity and through the civilian aid for the Secretary of the Army program and did that starting in 2019 until that program ceased operations this year. And I transitioned to emeritus status with that. So that was going from like Private Wallace, back in when I enlisted to then a 3-star protocol where I was getting to really interact with the top leaders in the Army through that role. And that really led to a lot of other, avenues of innovation when we'll talk about with Roger. But then went into the banking when I went to Hawaii. I was the engineering major for 3 years and thought that'd be the path I would go. Was working in a t-shirt shop on the beach, and my boss there was like, "Hey, why don't you think about business instead of engineering?" So I went to Hawaii Pacific University there that transferred some credits for me. Took 33 credit hours a semester while I worked full time and finished a finance degree in the year. I'm on the board now at HPU on the board of trustees, so kind of full circle with that too. And then came back to Oklahoma after my husband went off from active duty, went into the reserves, and I got a job at Citizens Bank of Edmond, where I work now. But I worked here for a couple of months, then went to the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, was in a management development program for about a decade, then went to a bank in northern Minnesota, and this bank got into trouble and asked me to come back and lead a turnaround. So I've been back here for 16 years, been the CEO for a little over a decade, and the bank is just the quintessential community bank. It's very much like It's a Wonderful Life, kind of the George Bailey. It's been here for 125 years, same intersection since 1901, which predated statehood in Oklahoma. And so I've been able to do a lot of good things here. And then through the CASA experience and being so engaged with basic trainees at Fort Sill, I was able to really see firsthand that there was still this, at the time, there were 2/3 to 3/4 of the aspiring soldiers coming in without a completed direct deposit form. And so then they were having to get bused to the local bank, miss training days, then miss paydays. And then we kept hearing from recruiters too that young people were still having a lot of difficulties with parents and other family members conducting fraudulent activity on their accounts specifically while they were training. So that's where we thought, well, we can come up with a digital direct deposit form that's like pre-filled and signed by me when you open your account online, and really have a super badass digital bank geared to the aspiring service member, where an under 18-year-old can open an account. You can use any ID that you can use to enlist, which is not anywhere available. In all the military banks, you cannot go online and open an account if you're not already a member of the military. You have to fax information or call, and this really allows you to open online. No other digital bank allows you to open an account if you're under 18, which most of our aspiring service members are doing it in that split option where they're enlisting while they're in high school, but deferring and going to either they're in the National Guard Reserves doing the basic training, after their junior year and then going to AIT after they graduate, or they're deferring their enlistment until after they graduate from high school. And so many times they're under 18. And so this gives them the option to open something online. So that was the creation of Roger, which is basically this, the radio signal that we understand the message. And we didn't name it after a particular guy, but he does have kind of like a wise old uncle, like kind of staff sergeant that's able to kind of provide some financial expertise to that new enlistee to help him have the best success going forward. And so We launched 2 years ago and have just been on fire ever since then.
What a cool story. Rags to riches, if you will.
It's close to being that.
Well, I'd say my only red flag out of this whole thing is what happened to the Air Force? Come on.
I know, like, we really thought we
Army, Navy.
I mean, we really did push Air Force. I mean, when you're have the Army experience, you're like, "Okay, I remember what those living conditions looked like for those Air Force airmen," and that was pretty you go to Hickam versus Schofield, it's a little bit different experience, and a couple of our kids got Air Force Academy appointments, and, we really pushed that opportunity, but, they ended up choosing different paths, but yeah, big fans. Where the Air Force is right in our backyard with Tinker. So our bank here at Citizens, 20% of our team has served, even though this is not a military community that we're sitting in. Our chief lending officer was enlisted Air Force. And so we have an advisory board that has a lot of representation from our Air Force brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And then in the bank to start, you know, at the very entry level.
Yeah, and this bank is really amazing story. So it was the worst performing bank in Oklahoma whenever I came in 2009, kind of at the end of the financial crisis. And then we turned that around. And then the board really, I was going to leave because I really thought, it's really hard to turn something around and then take it into a next phase of prosperity. You don't see leaders doing that too much. But they committed to saying that we want to be around for another century and gave me the pass to say, okay, make us relevant in order to do that. So we've had such incredible experiences here. So I hold a patent. I'm an inventor of a small business cash and coin kind of ATM for small businesses and invented that technology back in 2019 and have it operational in 2 locations. And so getting a patent I thought was kind of easy, but it's a little bit of a longer journey.
It's not easy.
Yeah, and then partnered twice during COVID, just me and Mark Cuban. I pitched Mark Cuban, and we actually ended up doing one project together, just me and him, to get Americans faster their stimulus money more quickly, so that they didn't have to wait on the treasury checks to come in, that they could go ahead and get their stimulus money, so that there wasn't a gap in their ability to put food on the table for their families. And then partnered again with Mark Cuban to accelerate a solution for the Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness piece that was being very delayed for the Small Business Association. So we came up with our own solution that 250,000 small businesses used in the first week of its deployment, and ended up being the solution used for fintechs. It was for non-customers of Citizens Bank, but really our work we did for the rest of the nation. So being able to do really big things there. And then sort of the last 3 years on the Federal Reserve's Federal Advisory Council, where we were directly, me and 11 other council members who were the CEOs of the nation's largest banks, were providing counsel to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and Chairman Powell on inflation, the fallout from Silicon Valley Bank's failure, and other challenges that banking has had over the last 3 years.
Wow. But talk to me about the Mark Cuban experience. How'd you get in touch with him? And then what did that look like? You didn't have to go through Shark Tank or anything, did you?
No, but it was kind of a Shark Tank pitch situation. So he tweeted out that he was looking to partner with a FDIC insured bank to get stimulus funds faster to Americans. And so my phone, I've been on social media for a really long time. When we were going through a turnaround, we didn't have any money for marketing. So social media was really the only way you could engage with the community. So all my friends on Twitter, they started just blowing up my phone like, Jill, this has to be you. Cuban just tweeted this out. And when I went on Twitter, I had all of these notifications for people tagging me and responses to him. So I responded to him. I give my cell phone out to everyone. Like, it is publicly out there. You just have to Google my cell phone and you can get access to it. And so I gave him my cell phone. I didn't hear anything, but then someone else on Twitter sent me a message and said, "Hey, here's his email address." And I emailed him, and within 2 minutes got a response saying that he would call me. He called, and I was in the middle of my board meeting, and I pitched him, and I thought he was wanting me to create something to cure everyone's ills, like something that would help all Americans. But instead, it was so smart. He said, I want you to create the solution for your customers, and then we can challenge the rest of the banks and credit unions in the US to do something similar. We just need to give them the pathway. And so it really wasn't just curing everybody's ills. It was just really focusing on my customers, but utilizing his megaphone to be able to really challenge everybody. And so, really interestingly, he wanted me to do something that wasn't quite compliant with what I could do legally. And so I said, like, okay, I need to get back to you tomorrow with my plan. So I pitched him the next day again. And then he asked me how soon you can do this. And this was on a Friday. And so, we hadn't even thought about how fast I could do it because it was going to take all this work. I was really focused on would I go to jail if I did it. And so once I figured out like I'm not going to go to jail and I got regulatory support and a lot of great minds that really gave me the endorsement to go forward, he said, "When can you do this?" And I said, "I can do it soon." And he literally said, "Bye." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 like, I can do it by Tuesday. I can do it by Tuesday." And he's like, "That sounds great." And I had it done by Sunday, and then I sent him the tweet on Sunday night about what I was gonna tweet out, and he was like, "This is great." And then I did the tweet, and then he retweeted it with a quote from him. And we had over 300 banks and credit unions contact me to get a similar program in place for their institutions, and so that was really incredible. Then the next opportunity came whenever he just sent me an email, the Paycheck Protection Program, so it was a way in which small businesses could get funds from the SBA that would be forgivable, but the forgiveness process, the application came out, and it was over 11 pages and was very complicated, and we had already been engaging a lot on Twitter with Mark and small businesses trying to help them get the PPP program application completed, and we knew how cumbersome it was for a lot of these really, really micro small business to get that done, and so he sent me a message when the application came out and showed that it was even more difficult to get forgiveness than it was to even get the loan. And he just, in one sentence, he has a really unique way of communicating. So, no capitalization, no punctuation, and a lot of misspellings. So, you have to kind of decipher what you're being told. But in one sentence, he's able to say, "Hey, Jill, can you help me maybe get some OE students to help develop a platform where we can have a guided application for PPE forgiveness?" And so I just responded on it. And like 2 days later, I asked him, like, "Hey, I'm going to need money for this because I've got someone who will build the platform for us free of charge, but this website's going to go crazy." And he just responded with his AWS login and password. And so I was able to use that. And then this wonderful company called Tesla donated all of their programmers to build the site. And with 10 days from the first email from Mark, we had that deployed and ready to go. And Secretary Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary at the time, testified in front of Congress and was being kind of grilled as to what's the status of this PPP forgiveness application that SBA is doing. And he said, "Don't worry, there's already been this new solution that's come forward in the private sector called PPP.Bank," which was what we did, that I did with Mark and this other company. So just like it was super fun. In the middle of kind of the developer putting this together, they said that their programmers were pretty worn out. They were working 24/7, and they asked if could Mark do like a little kind of video to pump them up. And I just texted him and asked if he would be able to do it. And 5 minutes later, I had a 4-minute video that was him sitting at his desk, just telling them what a badass what they were doing, and how important it was, and how it was just going to kick ass when I got to the market. And so, I mean, just to see like his level of accessibility. And I mean, I got hundreds of emails that he was sending to me of people coming to him asking for help or that they had an idea of how to help the nation. And then he has this expert network where he will pass off these inquiries so that they can be fulfilled. There was never an assistant that I met, never a PR person. It was always just him working at his home office. It was crazy. And so it was a great lesson that being accessible and being really transparent keeps you really engaged with what's happening in society. And he is really great at really targeting his attention in one area. And then after he's made his difference, kind of shifting to another area and kind of letting his experts that he's connected with take everything else to another level. So it was such a great learning experience, and I really it was so cool to have the opportunity to really kind of pitch Mark Cuban.
Well, that's great. Have you ever met him personally?
I haven't met him personally, but I get texts all the time from people saying, "Hey, I was just hanging out with Mark and we were just talking about you." And so I mean, that was like 2 weeks ago, the SBA, like deputy administrator is like, "Here's a picture of me and Mark walking, and we're actually talking about you while we're making this the journey." And so he asked me to do they did a profile with him in the Dallas, this like high-end Dallas magazine about, I think the title was Mark Cuban's All Grown Up. And they asked him for close friends and partners that could attest to, like, what Mark is like, and so I was one of 2 partners that he asked to be interviewed for that. So, I don't know if we're really BFFs, but I do know that if I reached out to him, there would be a response, but I haven't used that card yet, if that makes sense, so but I will sometime.
Mark, put your money in my bank. Come on.
He was so encouraging about your bank is just gonna blow up after this. He's like, being accessible and being engaged, he's like, that's gonna pay dividends off for the long term. So, I truly think if I asked him, like, "Okay, I need to raise, capital or something," I mean, I think he would have my back on that, but I only wanna do it whenever it's like whenever I really, really need to make that call. So, he's answered the phone for me a couple times to do interviews and to do podcasts for friends and things like that. So he's a very generous person, but no nonsense and very succinct in all of his communications.
Well, I mean, I think that accessibility, correct if I'm wrong, but I would think for a community bank, trying to scale, both seeing him do that and I mean, you don't have, you're busy to engage in those things isn't like a natural, yes, I'll go spend the next 2 weeks doing this. You have a business to run. So that shares a lot about you as well.
Oh, thanks. And I sit in the lobby and you just get so much, but you have a kind of the pulse of the community. And if you start seeing your customers have anxiety, then you know, hey, there's something going on here that's bigger than just this particular individual. So that accessibility to be of the people and to be like in for him to be a billionaire that could, not be engaged and just kind of worry about his own problems, would be probably a much easier route. But you can tell he's really fulfilled by still being around people like him that are seeking opportunities or they're trying to take advantage of if there's a challenge in the marketplace that they have a solution for it and that be also someone that's still so motivated by the problem solving at that stage of his career is really inspiring.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Well, what is your transition a little bit more to the military side? What is the sentiment of, young military members coming in? Do they have a position on like the status of our economy and, just, or are they just trying to, one foot in front of the other and let's get to basic training? Do you have that?
I think it just depends on the sophistication of the young person coming in. The aspiring service members that I've engaged with, some of them are. There was one young lady I was in the USO down in at Fort Sill the other day, and she had her degree in economics and was it's just like always wanted to be combat arms and she enlisted and came in as a specialist and was going field artillery and she had a really great understanding of the economy and just talking about how the job market was changing and how there was a lot more there was a season where it was really difficult to find talent, but that's kind of shifted some where the job possibilities are a little bit more limited than maybe they were a year ago, where it's kind of shifted more. The employer has a little bit more power than what the employee did, as we saw kind of coming out of COVID. But I think mainly it's like either this, desire to serve and regardless of what the economy is doing. But then there are some that are really trying to have more economic mobility for themselves and their families. And so it's a variety of different reasons that we serve. And so certainly recruiting has really shifted in the past year where there were so many challenges for the years during COVID and then several thereafter. And now we're seeing where the missions are being fulfilled very, very early. And there's a lot of enthusiasm around the force. There was so much creativity done with like the Future Soldiers program, where there was opportunities to be able to improve your physical fitness and your ASVAB because we were so needing new service members. But now there's been a little bit more of a shift in the momentum to fill those spots, and it's really exciting to see the enthusiasm.
Talk to me a little bit about your time as the, civilian assistant to the
Yeah.
Tech Army.
Yeah, so I got that call, the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army from, at that point in time, the chair of Senate Armed Services, Senator Jim Inhofe, who was from Oklahoma. And Senator Inhofe contacted me and said that there was an open position. They were increasing Oklahoma City is a critical city for recruiting, and they were underperforming at that time. And so they were adding a civilian aid to assist with getting recruiters access to schools and communicating with families about the Army story specifically. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, there's so many more qualified people than me to serve in that role. And what Senator Inhofe's team reiterated was that they really wanted an former enlisted soldier and with strong military family ties, and preferably a mom that had kids serving in the military, because they thought that that story would really resonate with families who were thinking about supporting their sons and daughters in military service. And so I was really honored to join that core, 100 individuals around the country, 100-year-old institution. I think that, there's some form of it that will likely come back. I got to serve with astronauts, Gold Star families, members that were just incredible, just the most decorated soldiers and civilians and that I've ever interacted with. All in an effort to support our recruiters and to tell the Army story and remove barriers for them. And so that was a lot of work and really fulfilling work. We were able to change the way that Oklahoma, it used to be that everybody took the ASVAB. I mean, in high school, we all took the ASVAB. And that really has gone away in Oklahoma schools, which is a super patriotic state that really supports the military community. And so it was getting some legislation passed to support what the ASVAB can mean from an occupational test and how it counted towards graduation. So it was a big effort that we understood, like, this is a challenge from the recruiters. I got great connections, and that's where the CASA comes in as a bridge to be able to say, firsthand, I see this challenge. This is something that can be corrected. How do we create a bridge to either create greater access points to get more students that are now taking the ASVAB, that information can be fed to recruiters, and then just educating counselors on, like, how the decorum that recruiters will have as they gain information from the schools. It also, our ROTC units, some of them were doing very well and others were struggling a bit. So trying to figure out, like, how do we get more community support around our ROTC programs and ensure that those instructors felt well supported, and then get the administration of the school to understand the value that ROTC brings to them. So it's just a lot of being able to utilize a network. We also had the really great experience of having two Medal of Honor recipients start their kind of Medal of Honor tour through Oklahoma. And one of those, Earl Plumley, is from Oklahoma. So that was just a really fun experience. He was an Oklahoma Guardsman, former Oklahoma Guardsman, a Marine, and a soldier. So he's like a gamer's paradise. Like, he should be like a first person kind of video game character himself. And then Matt Williams also came and visited, and his wife. And so to be able to organize the community to understand why you want the Medal of Honor, what a recipient, what that means, it was, we took for granted that there really was an understanding. And so as a CASA, you're really trying to help make sure that influencers in the community understand the sacrifices these families and soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors are all undertaking on a day to day, and how we can best support them.
Oh, that's pretty fantastic. Yeah, and it's just, the power of networks, and it's just amazing, hearing all the different things you're tied into to support folks. So if you were to look back across your, career, which is amazing, from your time in the military, what would be, the biggest, strengths or lessons learned that you pulled forward that have helped you become a successful, leader in this environment?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. I think, for me, I was fortunate to grow up in a strong faith community. So I did have some moral and ethical understandings of kind of how to operate in the world as an individual. But then joining the military, it gave me the understanding of how to work in teams and organizations ethically, and what you do whenever there's unethical behavior, that you have a responsibility to say something. You are required to to fulfill all the orders that you've been given, except for the illegal ones, and then you have a responsibility to say something. And so, and that experience I really carried forward in my career as to knowing like how do you have this amazing experience of building camaraderie with a team, going through something difficult together, but then having this common set of known norms that you're adhering to and the values that were taught in the army and how that carries forward into a corporate environment is just invaluable as for a young person that really didn't have a mechanism other than faith to really build those that value set out.
That's great. And it seems like, our youth are struggling with that right now, you know.
Yes, I mean, the world has changed so much, and our accessibility and the ability for our enemies to take advantage of weaknesses and cracks and how we relate to one another and maximize our divisions, whether those enemies are an enemy state or it's people trying to maximize for revenue to take advantage of discord. It just is really confusing and polarizing for young people and adults as well. And then you throw in like the complexities of financial management with that and all like how it can really be predatory, not just like a payday lender type of predatory, but predatory in how it learns what you're interested in to buy and is constantly finding different ways in which to maximize your ability to consume something whenever you maybe have few dollars to utilize. It's really difficult for a young person to have control and to budget and to think about the future rather than getting in a mode of living a paycheck to paycheck because you're being inundated with all these demands to purchase something exactly that you desire.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. As the wing commander at Tyndall, our airmen would come in and you drive through officer housing. So the ones that are, getting paid significantly more, very conservative generally on like cars. And then you drive through the, airman first class dorms and you see brand new Dodge turbo diesels and Corvettes. And I'm just like, so when in the Rogers Bank journey, are you providing, so it's a digital bank that folks can sign up for. Have you been able to tie into recruiters at all to help promote that? Like, is that a channel, if you will, to get your product out there?
Yeah, so the recruiters are our biggest partners. So they many times are driving young people to the bank to open the account. I mean, they're having to do that based upon bank hours or that there's maybe an online way of doing it, but it's kind of cumbersome. So we're really focusing on if you have a young person that's enlisting and is in your office in the evening on a Monday night and the bank is closed, then you can check off that next, thing because it used to be that in the army that you would turn in your direct deposit form at when you arrived at basic training and reception battalion. But now the recruiter's responsible for that. And so they can just check that off by having not directing them to use Roger, but letting them know that there's ways in which you can open an account online or you can wait until the next day to go to the bank. But to be able to utilize Roger, you would immediately get the direct deposit form signed by me that they can just text or email the recruiter right there and then they can just go on to the next stage of what has to be completed in the enlistment packet. And we're trying to be really there's banks out there that pay incentives to recruiters and kind of walk the line because some of that can really get them into trouble. And so we're trying to be really thoughtful and how we because we're not charging any fees. We're paying the highest interest rates of any military bank. So right now it's a 2% yield on checking and we've been as high as 5 and a quarter on the savings. I think we're at 387 right now on our savings rate. And then for if you opt into roundup features on your debit card, we'll match the roundup and the first 90 days. I mean, dollar for dollar up to a certain amount, and then it's a fraction of that over time. So you're earning a nice yield off of that matched rate. And then we all don't charge overdraft fees. So a lot of military banks really are leaders in the nation in the amount of overdraft revenue that they generate because they really charge a lot of fees to service members that do have regular overdrafts. And we have a very, very robust, one of the most robust budgeting and financial management systems within Roger that is available in the financial marketplace. And so we're really trying to put the tools in place so that don't get in a situation where you have a negative bank account. And I think one of the biggest features is we have free credit score monitoring. So when you open a Roger account, immediately you can opt in to see your credit score. And just like many of us, I pay for my kids to have credit score monitoring, it's like $20 a month. I don't have to do that anymore because they have Roger accounts. And so it does the same level of credit score monitoring that you would have to pay for otherwise. And so then we're getting that young airman or soldier where they're seeing their credit score. We're able to educate them what that means. So then if they do go buy, they can do their calculators within the app. That if they want to go buy a car, then they aren't going to pay a high interest rate because they're going to have really strong credit scores, or I know what that credit score is before they walk in the door, and they're going to know the budgeting impact of what that payment's going to do to their account.
Yeah, so I was curious, was linking that back to, airmen making poor financial choices. So you're able to educate that you've got educational programs and tools to help them, think through this.
And our entire staff on the Roger side has served, and they are available. We have an emergency line, there's secure messaging, so they can contact someone. They can be a mentor for them as well.
It seems like, I mean, what you're doing is amazing. And so well done. Super needed. Have you found, I mean, it seems like the opportunity, I'd say, just for college students, not military, to do it. Are you seeing it expand horizontally across other areas? Do you allow that? Is it focused, or what's your thought on that?
Yes, just so we can keep it that an aspiring service member can join, we have it open to everybody. So there's no barrier of entry, even though we're marketing specifically to the military. We're really surprised to see some of our very first customers to Roger were very, very retired general officers and admirals in the Navy. The Naval Academy specifically shared that Roger was launching, and we got a ton of people had graduated, that had been out of the service for 20 years coming on to Roger because they liked the yield and the product. But we are seeing that a lot of military families are opening these accounts for their students because we allow that accessibility, and then they can help them budget through and really be able to manage an account well and know that it's bank on certified as well as BBBP certified, which means it's really customized for the and geared towards those that haven't ever banked before. So it's really valuable for any young person as well as anyone that has been kind of unbanked or is reluctant or intimidated by the banking process.
What would you say the biggest difference is? So a little bit naive on the bank side, to go with the Rogers versus, even your bank, or just to say, I don't want to put direct competitors in, but let's just say another bank.
Yes.
Where are you different that you maybe don't offer services? I mean, we've seen, I think, some of the advantages, but why would someone not go to you, vice go to a larger one? Is it accessibility to mortgages and different things, loans? Is that?
Yeah, so we are leaders when it comes to VA lending, and so we have a solid VA lending process. So the big differences between like Citizens and Roger is Citizens, we even though we do allow you to open accounts with zero account balances, we don't allow you to keep it open at a zero balance for very long. Dormant accounts can be very dangerous and fraud ridden, so we'll close those accounts. With Roger, you can open with zero account. You could do it right now, and you could keep that open until you go to basic training and get your first paycheck, which could be a year. So we'll let it sit there for a year with no fees and be at a zero balance. With Citizens and at the other banks, there's going to be probably more vetting when it comes to more manual vetting as to the account holder, where Roger relies a lot on AI and some machine learning and utilizing the location of your phone, for instance, in relation to where you're saying that you are, and to ensure that you're certifying that this individual is truly a true person and not a bot that's trying to just open accounts. About 75% of the people trying to open accounts at Roger are not real people. And so you're very vigilant in the fraud. We don't have like payday lending. There's no consumer credit products within Roger other than mortgage lending. We really wanted to focus first on deposit building and just keep providing for the entry level soldier that's not really needing credit tools, letting them build the credit before we start offering any kind of credit options. Although for my more mature service members, we do have, and former service members, we have the VA lending product that is very, I mean, we've really worked hard. I went through was getting my own VA loan. We were buying a home a few years ago, and it was right whenever there was so much competition during COVID for homes. And we had homes that we would make offers on, and because we had a VA loan, we would get declined because the realtor would say that that would take too long of a time frame for this person selling the house. And so I came back to our bank and say, okay, how do we compress this time frame to ensure that we can close within a conventional type of time period so that our service members are not discriminated against whenever they're using a VA loan in a competitive marketplace. So we really have done a good job to get that really refined and compressed. And so I'm excited about that going in. We also don't have like other products. Whenever you look at some of the very large military focused institutions, banking is a side product. It's insurance that's really leading the profitability of the organization, and that's what they're leading with, and they're really not the bank is a subsidiary of this bigger entity. With us, we are banking experts, so that is the bank that is focused on, but you're not gonna be able to find an insurance product within Roger because we are focusing on the banking
Right.
piece.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I would think any young person, going to college, for example, like our daughter's, in college, just
Yes.
her youngest is, you know, how do you, I put her kind of on my own bank and we've got something in there, but she's got her own account, but I'm part of it. But at some point she's got to go out and do it on her own. It's like, what do you do now? So very interesting.
Yeah, so our kids all have the Roger account and I can't see it anymore, and it's on them, but it has a safety net where they can't overdraw their account. And even if it is some way that something crosses paths and they are overdrawn, it's not going to charge them a fee for that. There's no account maintenance fees. They're earning at least 2% interest on the checking, and then at least industry leading on the savings. So it's a perfect one so I encourage you, they can open the account in under 2 minutes, and all they need is a valid identification, and they have to take a selfie, but that's basically it.
That's great. You mentioned a little bit, how do you see technology playing into kind of, I'd say, military banking, as you're looking at it, but really banking as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, technology, we're committed to being technologically forward, to master the technology and be first to market with it. With other community banks, we're like, follow me. We're gonna do it first. If not us, who? If not now, when? Is very much our philosophy. And we also are, embedded in the AI experimentation process, and so trying to figure out how do we utilize AI to maximize our and the quality of service we're providing to customers and to ensure that there's not fraudulent activity happening on your account as well as that the bank isn't exposed to fraud. We're really interested too on crypto. So one thing that we're adding as well to Roger is the ability to have fractional investing. So if you want, much like kind of a Robinhood, or if you want to buy $1 of stock of Apple, then you'll be able to do that through your Roger account, or some more of the conventional cryptocurrencies, you may be able to invest in that, but not at a really high level. And so we're not trying to be scared by some of the technologies that are out there. And we understand like the blockchain is such a valuable tool to ensure that transactions can occur securely and quickly, that we want to ensure that we are captivating that into our ecosystem to ensure that we are always on the front of the line when it comes to what the future of banking looks like. Also with Roger, what we've encouraged other military banks is that we're like, join us. We would love for Roger to turn into a marketplace where it's not just Citizens Bank of Edmond that's part of Roger, but all these other military banks that want to stay relevant in the marketplace, but don't want to invest in the technology, that they can be part of this ecosystem as well. And that Roger becomes more of a gateway for account opening that's supported by multiple banks.
Yeah, that would kind of led into kind of the next thing is, you know, maybe part of that. But if you could implement one financial kind of policy nationwide that would safeguard military, members in the banking area, what would it be and why?
Man, this is such a great question. I wish that there's a lot of protection for service members, right? It's making sure that they're not taken advantage of, but they're also very inadequate. And I wish that there was more incentives rather than saying that don't do this, don't do that. If there was a way in which you had consumer lending laws are they vary from state to state. And they also make it where banks don't want to participate in that marketplace very much. So, like, it's really difficult in California, for instance, to do a car loan. It's difficult to do a second home loan in Texas. And if there was a way to exempt where military members have more of a national, that they weren't subject to some of those state laws, I think you would see more uniformity and lower cost. And then if there was a way to make it where payday type of loans, like needing cash loans, that there was some like CRA credit or something that you were able to be giving to a bank to encourage them to do these loans so that they're not. When I went to Lawton the other day, there was 29 payday lenders when I drove around that I could count, and that's over a 200% loan rate that they're charging those young people coming out of the gates. And how do you eliminate that? Well, I think that you eliminate it by providing banks some type of incentive, not necessarily monetary incentive, but just kind of like a credit in their CRA to be able to serve these young people, and especially service members and their families, so that they aren't subject to predatory type of lending situations.
Well, so good. I'm encouraged that there's a path forward with, your ability to engage. I'm not sure how many of folks out there doing it, but with you, your influence, that's encouraging. So thank you. I mean, it really shows, military service before self, selflessness. You have really modeled that well. And so thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for this engagement. It's got me excited about, what I need to take on going forward. So
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to wrap this up, but really enjoyed it. Look forward to our continued conversations. Seeing you in Oklahoma next time I'm out there. But
perfect.
if folks want to join Rogers or get more information, Bank of Edmond, Citizens Bank of Edmond, or just you, how best would they do that?
Yeah, so you're welcome, like, to connect me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's just Jill Castilla, Castilla. My cell phone is 405-808-8993. Text or call anytime. And also roger.bank, ROGER.bank. And you can also find us in any of the app stores at Roger Bank. And just try us out, like open the account. If you don't like it, you can close it. There's no fees associated with it. Let me know what you like and what you don't like so we can keep doing better and keep the things that are going well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jill. Really appreciate it. And keep it up. You're killing it.
Thanks, David. You too. Thanks for leading the way.